experience. She'll be presenting on the evidence and efficacy of anticoagulation therapy in the treatment of thrombosis. Please start sharing your screen.
Thank you for the introduction, Neha. Sorry for this. Okay. Yeah, after the stalwart talks of Kiran Makineni sir and Muralidhar Joshi sir, it's an honor to be able to talk on the topic. The kids have done really well. They have presented the cases so well. I'm really impressed. The confidence and the style of presentation was really well, very good. So my topic is a vast one, actually, if we actually sit down for the evidence about anticoagulants in thrombosis, but I've tried to shorten it as much as possible. So that I'm just going to touch and go all the areas. So as Avantika mentioned, thrombosis is nothing but a blood clot which forms in the blood vessel, and it causes an obstruction to the flow in the circulatory system. Sorry, the presentation has got stuck. Sorry. Yeah, sorry for that. So here we see a thrombus in the deep vein. That's a blood clot, which will travel through the larger veins, inferior vena cava, go through the right heart and enter the pulmonary circulation and cause pulmonary embolism. So which was the famous Virchow triad, which Vijayalakshmi madam was supposed to talk about elaborately. So here basically the problem is either in the blood or the blood vessel wall or in the flow. So there are so many causes for causing a dysfunction in the three areas, and that eventually leads to thrombus formation. The most common of these being major surgeries, malignancies, infections, and varicose veins and immobility of late. So what are the signs and symptoms? So when do you think you should go to the doctor? So suppose the patient is having some unexplained fever, we are feeling unusually weak without any explanation, there is chest pain, extreme sweating, unexplained swelling in the limbs with unusual warmth and tenderness, then definitely we should be seeing a doctor, because these are likely to be due to thrombosis in some part of the body. Every symptom is related to thrombosis in some part of the body. So who are at risk of developing thrombosis? So elderly population, people with very poor mobility, patients admitted in ICUs with severe diseases, obese, and patients with active cancer, and of course, patients in the early postoperative period, and also pregnancy. So before we go to discuss about the anticoagulants, I just want to touch the clotting cascade, because it is important to know where the different anticoagulants are acting and which one to choose in different scenarios. So we have intrinsic and extrinsic pathways in the coagulation cascade. So the direct surface contact triggers the intrinsic pathway, and the tissue damage triggers the extrinsic pathway. And both the pathways come to a common pathway where, and most of the drugs act at the common pathway at the level of factor 10A and at prevention of conversion of thrombin to prothrombin to thrombin. So what do we do when we have a thrombosis? So first, this is a working chart that I really like. It's very simple. So we just have to look whether it is a superficial thrombosis or deep vein thrombosis. So usually ultrasound is done to check in which vessel we are having the thrombus. So if it is superficial, we just have to give symptomatic treatment with warm compresses, NSAIDs, and stockings. If it is a deep vein thrombus, it has to be evaluated further to identify the location of the thrombus and also observe the progression of the thrombus to decide on the treatment of anticoagulation. It is not just about starting anticoagulants, but also about how long the patient is supposed to be on anticoagulants. So here, follow-up ultrasounds help us a lot. So now coming to classification of anticoagulants, we have both parenteral, that is injectable anticoagulants, and oral anticoagulants. So based on their site of action, they are divided into thrombin inhibitors, indirect and direct, and factor Xa inhibitors. So the commonly used drugs in India are heparin, unfractionated, low molecular weight heparin, enoxaparin, and in direct in oral anticoagulants, we use dabigatran, rivaroxaban, and warfarin, of course, the age-old coumarin derivative. So, are there only pharmacological methods to treat a thrombus? What do we do in a patient who is bleeding, or in a patient there is thrombocytopenia, in a patient in whom we cannot use the anticoagulants? Then we, of course, we use the graduated compression stockings and also the pneumatic compression devices. Along with that, in some patients with some indications, inferior vena cava filters can be used so that the thrombus in the deep veins in the lower limbs doesn't progress higher up to the heart and reach the pulmonary circulation and cause pulmonary thromboembolism. And of course, the major mantra is early mobilization. So what are the indications for antithrombotic therapy? There are indications for both prophylactic and therapeutic anticoagulant use. So DVT, pulmonary thromboembolism being the most common for both prevention and treatment. Also to prevent arterial thromboembolic events in patients with prosthetic heart valves and atrial fibrillations. And transient ischemic attacks are also an area where antithrombotic therapy is very important. So coming to the evidences part, there are multiple guidelines to treat thrombosis in different areas. Like a thrombus can form anywhere. It could be a deep vein thrombus, it could be a pulmonary embolism, it could be a stroke, it could be unstable angina due to thrombus in the coronaries. So, and thrombosis happening due to cancer. So there are multiple guidelines. I've just tried to consolidate few to give a general idea. So this is one such consensus guidelines, basically by American Society of Cancer Medications. Both the NCCN and ASCO are American guidelines only. So in the initial acute treatment, low molecular weight heparin is preferred. And in the long-term treatment, low molecular weight heparin as a monotherapy is preferred, with or without warfarin. That again, there are again criteria to add warfarin to it. And the duration of treatment also has multiple criteria to decide on how long the patient should be on anticoagulant therapy. The criteria differs for prophylactic anticoagulant therapy and in patients with established deep vein thrombosis. So these are for venous thromboembolism. So there is a grade A evidence saying that direct oral anticoagulants like warfarin should be used in case of deep vein thrombosis. In selected patients with pulmonary embolism, like subsegmental pulmonary embolism without causing hemodynamic instability, can be treated as outpatients. And inferior vena cava filters should be avoided because what they say is caval filters, they themselves are prothrombotic. They themselves can induce further thrombus load. So unless there is a contraindication for using of an anticoagulant, vena cava filters are not being preferred. This is in unstable angina. So where and when to use anticoagulation along with antiplatelet therapy. So the most commonly used anticoagulants here again are the low molecular weight heparins when the patient is in hospital. Some consultants prefer continuing them on low molecular weight heparin, and some switch to oral anticoagulants like enoxaparin and apixaban. Sorry, apixaban. Enoxaparin is a subcutaneous, it's a parenteral drug. So what determines the length of the anticoagulation? So how long I have been started on an anticoagulant. So how long should I be taking an anticoagulant? So it basically depends on the location of the clot. So if clot is there in distal vessel with not much of morbidity, and the clot which has caused a pulmonary thromboembolism. So the duration of anticoagulation varies for both, obviously. And what are the risk factors which have contributed, whether they are reversible? Suppose the clot has happened because of a surgery, and we don't predict that to happen again and again. And whether the risk factors are going to develop in the future. So all these factors help us in deciding the length of the anticoagulation. So low risk for future clot and high risk for bleeding, then the treatment length is short. So it is often less than 3 months. And if the patient is high risk for a future clot, if we are suspecting that there could be recurrent deep vein thrombosis, then we put them on DOACs or NOACs for a longer period of time. So coming to COVID-19, Kiran Makineni sir has given an excellent picture about anticoagulation in COVID-19. I have been battling this for the last 5 months, and we call thrombosis as a demon, literally, in our ICU. So we have seen, we have lost many people to pulmonary thromboembolisms, yes. So every patient in the ICU, in the hospital, not even in the ICU, gets prophylactic anticoagulant doses. So the dose of the drug depends on their D-dimer levels. We are following D-dimer. There are multiple inflammatory markers like ferritin, LDH, but we are adjusting the dose of anticoagulants with the D-dimer levels. The most commonly used is enoxaparin. And in patients with renal dysfunction, we are using unfractionated heparin. There is a recommendation saying that intermittent pneumatic devices should not be used along with thromboprophylaxis in COVID patients. But in regular population, we use both. We use sequential compression devices and pharmacological anticoagulation together. But here, the recommendation is to not use both together. So now the American Society of Hematology COVID-19 task force, it has recommended that even if the platelet count is as less as 25,000, we should not stop giving anticoagulants to the patients. It is so important in COVID to prevent thrombosis because the prevalence is so high, and it is tremendously increasing the morbidity and mortality. So I would rather face a risk of bleeding than face the risk of thrombosis. And so some others have even suggested use of recombinant tissue plasminogen activators. So that's a thrombolysis agent in patients who have refractory hypoxemia, who are severely hypoxemic, not responding to proning, not responding to ARDS ventilation. Because the basic mechanism is considered to be the pulmonary vasculature microthrombi. This is only a general suggestion, not being followed routinely. We have only tried in a couple of our cases, but those cases were proven cases of pulmonary embolism. We did a CTPA, there was pulmonary thromboembolism, and we had to thrombolyze those patients. So who needs the extended prophylactic anticoagulation in the COVID-19 population? That means who needs anticoagulation even after discharge? This extended duration is between 4 to 6 weeks. So we are putting these patients usually on oral anticoagulants, the direct acting oral anticoagulants. So the category of people are the elderly with multiple comorbidities who have been on ventilator and who have had severe sepsis during the course of recovery. So these are the set of people who go home on oral anticoagulants. So usually it is either apixaban. Some prefer putting them on dabigatran. So 4 to 6 weeks is the duration that we are following post-discharge. So this is the battle that has been going on. We definitely saved many and we lost many, and the battle is still on. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for enlightening the information. And Dr. Mahdi Garu is one of the senior critical care consultant leading one of the biggest critical care unit in Hyderabad city. We have got the lockdown in Hyderabad city, and immediately after that, when there are so many lives were at risk, she is the first courageous critical care consultant who convinced everybody and initiated life-saving critical care services, staying in those horrible PPE kits for days and weeks together. I remember there are almost 3 to 4 consecutive weeks without break. Madam fought so hard, working for 18 hours together on a longer days. Yes, unfortunately, we lost few, but under her supervision, care, and commitment, there are so many thousands of lives were saved in Hyderabad. And she's a mother of 2 with a huge family, putting everybody at risk and motivating the team. Ma'am, yeah, it's a great service, and it is a true pleasure and honor to have you here. And the information what we got in these complex situations is from that person who fought literally hard and saved people even at 80+